Well, hello, welcome to this TechNet video. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the real stripped down basics of Photoshop. Now there is probably an unlimited amount of ways that I could tackle this video, as the opportunity to use Photoshop is kind of endless. However, today all we're going to be doing a nice, quick, straightforward video of how to open Photoshop, how to open a document, how to get in some imagery, how to play with some text, and more or less what you're looking at on the Photoshop program. I'll keep it nice and simple for today, and going forward I can release a few more advanced Photoshop tutorials, but for today it's just getting text in, getting some images in, how to cut them out, how to change the color. Some very straightforward, simple stuff just to give you the bare bones basics of Photoshop, and then from there you can, spread your wings and fly and take your Photoshop learning to the next level. So let's jump into it. First things first, when you open Photoshop, you will be presented with a screen very similar to this if you've worked on Photoshop before. Even if it's just to have a little tinker around, you might have a few recents here, i.e. a good little spoiler for later is this one here that we'll be working on today. But all we want to do is go to Create New, like so, and a window like this will appear. Now Photoshop's very good. What it likes to do is give you a variety of different options in terms of what style of image you would like to work on, and that can be some print work, so stuff that you intend to print out, something that you want to put on a website, or like YouTubers do, you want a film and video style aspect ratio to edit from. For today we're just going to kind of do like a magazine poster, a very basic one, and for those you know the size of an A4 piece of paper, that's all there for you, an A3 bit of paper. This part is actually a lot more important than you think, because if you open an image which is A4 and it's supposed to be the size of a billboard, if you're working for an advertising company, you're going to find that the quality of the images is going to really be stretched out and blurry when you go to print it on said billboard. Vice versa as well, if you open a project the size of a billboard and it's only to be for an A4 piece of paper, you would keep the quality, but the image and project size would be astronomical. So do check your project size before continuing. One of the things as well to consider, if for example you wanted to do like an A0, which is roughly the size of a large film poster, it's not in the presets, but you could just Google size of A0, and whatever it gives you, you could put on the right hand side here in its width and height in terms of pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, whichever one you find comfortable. So you can make your own there. Another great example is like Instagram's 1:1, so as long as your width and height are the same, you essentially get a square, and it's as straightforward as that. The rest of the stuff, again, for more advanced stuff we can go into later, but 300 pixels per inch is a good quality, and all the color modes, etc. is absolutely fine. So for now you don't need to worry about it. All it needs to be is the size and aspect ratio. For today we're going to do just some A4 stuff, and you want to give it a name as well. So I'm going to call it Photoshop walkthrough, like so, and then we can press create. Okay, and then you get that generic Photoshop screen that we're all used to. So typically you'd get introduced to a layout like this. You have a nice blank document in front of you. I'm just going to talk through a little bit of what we've got going on up here. I'm just going to click the move button at the top. As you'll probably notice, I might as well start up there. If I click on any of these tools, no matter what they do, you actually get a different interface at the top, which is fantastic. It basically means there's kind of subheadings within each tool. So whichever tool you use, you can manipulate how much or little tweaks within the tool that you can use. Okay, so every time that you click one of the tools, at the moment this is the move tool, so I can move any images that I would have in my project. There's a few options I've got. I can auto select things, which I personally keep off, and I'll tell you why later. And you can show the transform controls, which basically means the little edges and anchors on the edges of an image. You can either see them or you can't see them. Again, I'll show you that shortly. On the bottom right down here, you have your layers. This is again somewhere that you will use a lot. You may have something similar to this. If I just go to workspace and reset essentials, you may have actually a layout that looks very similar to this. The reason mine doesn't, or didn't, for example, is because I like to basically change and open and delete different tabs that you don't want to use. You may look at 10 different Photoshop documents, and the person using that Photoshop program may have their panels in completely different places, and that's absolutely fine. You will obviously start with the Learn Photoshop and the libraries. If you get sick of them, you can get rid of them. You click on the 4 lines up here, and you just close that group. Similar with libraries, we don't need libraries personally, so I can close that tab group, and we're back to where we want there. If you like to use swatches, which is basically like a color palette for a painter, in terms of where you can save your colors for later, you can go with there. I just leave it on color for now, because that's the generic thing. I do genuinely keep it in its kind of general layout, but there are other things that you can drop in all in your window scheme here. So any of these, for example, you can drop on. So if I was working in 3D, I could click that button and it would add the 3D tab that I could manipulate on here. One of the things you might not have as well on is the rulers, which would be in view just here. At the moment, it may look like this. If you go to view and rulers, just turn them on. And what you're able to do is drag from the ruler itself onto the screen, and you'll notice this blue kind of line, okay? And that doesn't affect the image itself. All it does is basically give you some guides to work with. So if I wanted to make sure where the middle was, it's going to snap to the middle eventually. And then there we are. That is the exact middle of my document. And I can make sure things are aligned, okay? That is something that I always keep handy just in case I ever need to align anything. And it's something that you want to consider having on as well. So you may be at this stage now and you're like, okay, cool, Steve, yeah, get on with it. Let's get an image in. Okay, let's get an image in. And there's a few different ways you can do it. You can go to File and Open, like so, and it'll open up something like this. This is obviously my file explorer. I'm going to go to TechNet videos, like so. I'm going to go to Resources and Photos, and I've got a few photos here. I was going to do an Animal Crossing style one, but I thought I'd just grab a lovely photo of James here and hit Open. What it's going to do, it's going to open it on a different tab where you can manipulate it before unlocking the image on your layers and dragging it into your Photoshop walkthrough. That is one way to do it. Personally, that's not my favorite because then you get a lot of tabs going on up here. And yes, I do want to close it. What I personally like to do is I have my file explorer open, separate to Photoshop, and I just drag it onto the image like so. That's how I do it, because then you have no tab. Obviously, there are a few different drawbacks to that. You can't manipulate the image before. Hypothetically, if I wanted to cut James out of his background, it might be easier to do it the other way, but you can just drag straight onto the image, and as we can see here, it's made a layer, okay? One of the first things I recommend you do, if you haven't already, is rename your layers. As you get more and more of them, you'll find that it does become a bit of a mess. Just double click on the text and I will change this to James, like so. Right, and as you can see here, if I go up to my tool, my move button at the top, we can move our image around wherever we like, and we'll get those pink kind of guides to tell us if we're straight in line, halfway through the middle, etc, etc, and it looks nice and good. As I said before, as I click through them, we have the different properties of the tool at the top. I'll just show you the move tool, the show transform controls, like the anchors on the side of the image. If I just click that on and off, you'll see that I can manipulate those, so I can grab the corners, make it bigger and smaller. Good thing about Photoshop now is no matter how much I move my cursor around, the image is always going to stay at the aspect kind of ratio. It's going to kind of hold its value so I don't squish his face. If I hold shift, I can then change it and squish his face if I want to. But for those who have ever tweaked on Photoshop before, it used to be the other way around, but now it's slightly different. If you did have auto select on, if I was to click around the image, it would automatically try and click on the first thing that is highest on the layer of the project. You may be thinking to yourself, that's a lot easier. Personally, I like to have it off, and then if I need something, I can just click on the layer and manipulate that layer. Simple as that. So that's getting images into the project. Let's talk about manipulating this image for what I want it to do. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to make this image bigger and kind of fill my front page to be its kind of main heading image. So I'm going to drag this over here, and I'm going to drag this at the top, and I'm going to move it into position like so. I think that looks great, doesn't it? Right, what is our issue? I seem to have some kind of negative space. Okay. Right, what I'm going to need to do is rasterize my layer. And rasterizing in the most simplest terms is basically saying I'm happy with this size, and it's going to kind of convert it to a kind of a set of pixels, which kind of means if I want to make it bigger or smaller, it's going to stretch those pixels. Positive of that, of the changing it to pixels, it means we can then manipulate it in its entirety, okay? As I said before, this is a nice and basic tutorial, so I'm not going to go too much into rasterizing, but if you are finding that you can't edit the image, just ensure that this little grey icon on your layer is gone. And the way to get rid of it is to right click and just rasterize our layer just here, okay? And that gives us the ability to influence it, okay? And the first thing we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be filling in this space at the top. And there's a few different ways you can do it. The most straightforward way is if you go to this tool, which is the rectangular marquee tool. I will do a quick rundown of the rest of the tools that I haven't used at the end. Another good tip, as you've noticed, is if I hover over every tool, it will tell you what it does. So for the tools I don't cover today, and you do want to know what they do, you can just hover over them and it'll give you a rough idea, okay? So I'm going to select an area in which I want to fill. And to do that, I grab the rectangular marquee tool, or I could grab my Lasso tool. It's completely up to you. But I'm going to be filling in a square, so I'm going to use that. I'm just going to, it doesn't matter where I start, as long as I fill in that whole white space like so, just down to where the image ends. And we have these marching ants, and that is essentially the selected area of my image, okay? And as long as my layer of James is selected, I can go to Edit, Fill, and this box appears. Now, fill content aware can be fantastic, but it can be kind of comedically wrong at times. What it basically does is it scans the layer you've selected and tries to predict what you'd like to fill it with. And in this case, as you're probably guessing, we're hoping to just fill it in with that kind of grey background, so I've got more space to work with. But it may take a little bit of James with us, we'll see. So let's just hit OK and see what it comes up with. Oh, not bad. Okay, so that is just the basic fill content aware. Okay, so if I press Ctrl Z, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to Edit. I'm going to go to Content Aware Fill, and a larger box of space appears. Okay, and what it basically does is it kind of gives you a separate window where you can use this brush tool, and you can kind of brush over places where you don't want it to fill, and it will give you then a final result. Okay, so if for example there's a lot going on and you do want it to take the background, you can load this window, and it will give you a preview, and you can tell it the bits that you want it to take it from, and it's a bit more precise. Okay, then we can hit apply and OK, and then we can Control D to deselect. So I've noticed I've got a slight little line here, and all my mistake has been is I've just not selected the area correctly. So I'm going to Control Z to undo and undo again, and I'm going to deselect. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to grab that marquee tool again. I'm going to come just a little bit lower this time, so it overlaps ever so slightly. So when I go to edit the content aware fill and let it fill it itself in like so, when I hit apply and OK again, let's let that load for a second, and then deselect, that line is gone. Okay, so do ensure sometimes you may just miss that slight area. Actually, making that mistake is a good way to kind of prove that it does happen, and it's just a case of retweaking it. Okay, so if you hold Alt and use the scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out, and then if you hold the space bar, you get this little, just the space bar by itself, you can get this little hand, and when you're zoomed in, you can move around the image like so. So sometimes that can be a good way to do it. Right, so we have this lovely photo of James. It fits our project really well. Let's get some text in, okay? So all we need to do is go to our text tool, which is just here, okay? So we click the text tool. It will load for a second. We want to make sure it's horizontal. A few times for some reason it's been already on vertical, and we can click there. So there's a couple of different options we can do. I can just click once and it's going to put in a lorem ipsum, which is a kind of preset text. Let me just change the font just slightly to Arial just so we can see it, and it's just going to put in that base kind of preset just there. As you're kind of starting to notice, all my options are at the top if I want them, in terms of the font properties, the size, and then the alignment alongside the color. Okay, I'm actually going to delete this because I want to show you a different way in which you can import some font. A good option here, a good idea here is because these two layers are together like so, I can hold shift, click on them both so they're both selected. I can right click and I can merge those layers so they become one layer and they are one full image like so, rather than them being two split up. Just a bit of organization if you want it. What I can do again is click on the text tool, and I can actually draw a box this time if I wanted to, and just leave that there. And what it does, it basically allows me to type in that box however much I want to, and it allows me to kind of create a text box if I like, and it will fill to that specification. At the moment we're just making a header, so I'm going to click on my type tool at the top, move tool with V, and just delete it. And I'm going to go back to my text tool, and I'm going to use option 1 and just click once, and it kind of gives you an unlimited kind of text box. Okay, and once it's highlighted, I'm just going to type TechNet, and then I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to put news. I know we don't have a TechNet news magazine, it's a newsletter. What I then want to do is I want to highlight it, and I want to pick a font I'm happy with. I think I had one earlier. I think it's this one here. I like this one a lot, just when I was testing out. But you have a variety of different fonts. You can install fonts from a website called DaFont. If people are interested in a video how to do that at home, do let me know. It's very straightforward. For those who are familiar with DaFont, it's just as straightforward as finding the font that you want, downloading it, and then double-clicking on the TrueType font file and installing it, rather than using the Activate fonts like we typically do at college. It's slightly different. Okay, so I'm happy with that font. That looks nice, and I can drag that and make that bigger if I wish. Okay, I'm gonna pop that here, and I'd like to double click on it if I want to change it again. So if I want to double click on it to change it or highlight it, and I get that property window back up, I want to pop that in the middle like so, and then I'm gonna move that into the middle. There we are, and it gives you those rulers, a kind of snapping option. I'm going to double click on it one more time, and then I'm going to click up here, which is to change the color. And now obviously I can click anywhere up here and it's going to change the color. I can change it to blue, I can change it to red. What I want to do is I actually want to change it to the kind of brown that's in James's kind of checkered shirt. And the way we do that is simply just hovering over the image and just clicking as and where I want it. There you go. Pretty simple and straightforward. I can make it gold by clicking over here if I really want to. It's kind of a faded gold. I can make it the black, the same color of James's glasses, or the kind of light kind of grey in his eyes. But hey ho. Right, so I actually want it to be brown, so we're going to click back to brown and it kind of gives it that look, okay? And then we can hit OK, and that looks great. I'm really happy with how that looks. I kind of want to give it a bit more character, okay? And the way I'm going to give it more character is I'm going to ensure that the layer is selected. I'll go to the effects tool down here, and we've got a variety of blending options. To see all of them, just hit blending options at the top, and this window appears. As long as that layer is selected, we can play with all of these. I'm not going to go through all of them today. Typically, a lot of people like to just bring their text away from their background, and you can do that with the drop shadow, as you can see there. As long as your preview is on, which is this one here, you can kind of see how they'll look in a kind of base format. Just to give you a very quick rundown of what a drop shadow does, it allows you to basically put a shadow behind your text. How far away you want that shadow, how much you want the shadow to kind of be spread out, how big you want the shadow to be. You've got a lot of options, which direction you want the shadow to be facing. Again, however you want that text to look, it is doable, okay? I'm going to turn that off for now, and I'm actually going to go to the bevel and emboss. As you can already see just from turning that on, it kind of gives it a kind of textured kind of look. If I have it on smooth, that doesn't look too bad. I'm going to have it on chisel hard, as it kind of gives it a harder edge. I'm going to give it a bit more depth and a bit more size. There we go, that's what we want. And it kind of gives it quite a nice kind of chocolate look, actually. I didn't actually mean for it to look like that, but that works quite well. It's just a trial and error, so I'm actually going to leave that. You get a few other ones, so similarly to the drop shadow, you can kind of have an inner glow and an outer glow if you want one, which is down here. It kind of just basically allows the edge to glow without being more of a shadow. I'd probably recommend experimenting with them as I've just done and seeing how they look. If you like it, great. If you don't, roll with it. And then once you're happy with your results, just hit OK. So I've kind of got this kind of chocolate look, which looks actually quite cool. I've never tried to make some chocolate text, but that looks quite good. Right, important thing. I want to have the TechNet at the top, and I want the news to be behind James's head. So am I right in saying I can just drag that down? Oh, I guess that doesn't work all that well. Okay, let me drag it back up. I guess what I need to do is I need to click on James's layer, and I need to highlight James, essentially duplicate his layer, so then I can sandwich the text between him and his background. I think that would work. Okay, so for now I'm going to turn off, which using this eye tool indicates how visible it is. I'm going to turn that off. It's still there, as you can see. I just turned it off so I got a bit more room. And I'm going to cut James out from his background. Okay, I'm going to do the way that is a bit more precise, and then there is another option later when I import another image, but I'm not going to get to that. So we have this tool here. It's the quick selection tool. You've got this one. And if you click and hold on any of these tools, pardon me, you can actually have an option of a few different ones. Magic Wand tool is quite good as well. If I click on James, it's basically going to try and select everything that it thinks is within that color. It can be good. I'm more of a quick selection tool myself. Control D to deselect, and all we're going to do is if you hold the brackets tool, you can make your brush bigger and smaller, which is the open and close brackets just to the right of P on the keyboard. The left one makes it smaller, the right one makes it bigger, and as you notice, the sizing is at the top. Okay. One thing to consider is your plus and your minus on the selection tool. Obviously, if it's on plus, as I kind of click and drag across James, Photoshop's trying to detect the edges quite well, and Photoshop learns quite quickly. So I can just drag across his shoulder, across his hand. I don't really need the 3.5mm jack, but I'm going to grab it. So what I'm going to do is if I just click there, it's going to get a bit confused. So I'm going to Control Z to undo. Use that left bracket to make the brush smaller, so it's about the size of the jack, and then I can just click and it's going to try and pick it up as best it can, making that brush as small as possible. Obviously, if I want to hold Alt and use the scroll wheel to zoom in, I can do that. And we just want to kind of just fill in that space. We have a little area here. I can click the minus up here if I want to, and as you can see, the brush has a minus and I can get rid of it. So it's not perfect, there's a bit of hair sticking out the top, etc, etc, but that's absolutely fine. The marching ants have got the rough area, okay? What we want to do is we want to go to the select and mask button at the top, okay? So if we click that, another box loads. It will probably look a little bit like this to begin with, okay? And you have a few different view modes. It's automatically gone to red for me because that's what I like to use. And what it basically does is it tells me the bits that are essentially cut out, which is great. Now, what we want to do is we want to basically refine the edge of his hair down his shoulder and get rid of these kind of little tiny, awkward bits that don't look great and cut out all that well. All we want to do is make sure that if I just click here, our refine edge brush tool, which is this one just here, is selected, okay? Make sure our brush is at a good kind of edge. And all we want to do is literally as simple as, nothing too perfect, it's just click and hold and just drag across the top of his hair like so. And what it basically does is it detects the area in which he kind of divides from his background using the difference in color. If I just let go already, there's so much more detail in letting a few of those hairs through. I can click again and just let that other hair through. If I don't like it, I can hold Alt and I can rub it out. I'm just going to kind of go down here, let a bit more of that hair through, let that division kind of go through quite nicely. Let the little textures and stubbles on his beard come through. And the little kind of out of focus shoulder is also really good for this because it's just going to find that edge for me, which is great. Annoyingly, I'm not actually using the rest of this to go behind the text, but it's a good way to kind of show using that refine edge brush tool. The more patient you are, the better result you're going to get. Up here as well with the blur, it's going to do really well in just highlighting the bit that I want it to remove, like so. And I can click here and just get rid of that bit of white as well. Now when I zoom out, obviously I want the white in the glasses, that's fine. What I can do is I can go on view mode again, I can go black and white, and you can see that it's actually cut out all the hairs, which is fantastic. That is really, really cool. So I can go back to overlay, turn it onto here. Now, in theory, I can just leave it like that, and I'm gonna leave it like that. All I'd recommend you do is go output to, I'd just put a new layer. Again, you've got a couple of options. New layer with mask, you can output it as a selection if you want to change the color, but I'm just going to do it as a new layer for now. Okay. You can decontaminate the colors, and if I just click that on and off, you'll notice that it kind of tries to get rid of the kind of slightly out of focus bit. Actually works quite well for my case. I'm actually going to leave that on, and I'm going to just change that to new layer and hit OK. And then it's going to hide the layer before, and it's actually done quite well. If I just grab this tool here, click and hold, you get the rectangle tool. It's black at the moment, and I just click and drag across the whole thing. It's going to go black, but I'm going to put James's copy on top, that's not bad at all, actually, for, you know, under a minute's work. That's not bad at all. Obviously, I recommend you spend a bit more time making sure it's perfect, but that's pretty good in terms of cutting something out. I'm just going to delete that rectangle because I don't need it, but you're starting to notice how the layers work. Obviously, the layers at the top are going to shine through more, okay? So let's turn on TechNet News and see how we're getting on. Not terrible, that looks pretty good, but I want it to be behind James. The way I'm going to do that is just grab the top layer copy like so, drag it above, and it sits behind. And what I can do, as you can see it's off at the moment, the background layer, just turn that back on, and then we go. Looks pretty good. It's kind of behind him, he's in front of the text. There's a lot of like popular magazines like to do, and we're all good to go from there. So we've done the blending options, we've done select and mask. Right, let's put in another text layer. Let's play with a bit more text. So what I want to do is I want to kind of show that we've got a lovely interview with the lovely James Bale here. So I'm going to create a small text box like so. The text is going to be huge and it's going to be the wrong font. What I can do is I can click and hold. If you notice up here, before I click and hold, the cursor changes to like a finger pointing left and right. If I click and hold and then drag to the left and the right, I can actually make my text bigger and smaller to what I'm happy with as well. So I'm going to do it like that. What I'm going to change as well, I'm going to change it to an Arial font. And I want it to be left facing as well. I'm actually going to make that slightly smaller. And then what I can do to be even more advanced, I can go on properties over here. I can go down slightly to my spacing. It's on 46 at the moment. I'm just going to change it to auto. And typically it's quite good. Again, I can click and hold and I can just make sure that spacing on my text is good. And all I can write is interview with technician sensation ... At the moment it's not the best, I'll be honest, so let's have a little tweak. Let's go with that, and let's change the spacing slightly. Let's see if auto does all right. Yeah, auto's done a little better. There we go, that looks pretty good. We can drag that down to reveal sensation like so. And then you're probably thinking, what are you doing here, Steve? I can then make another text box, like so. And I can grab some italic, like written font, and I can write James Bale, like so. So it looks like he's kind of typed it himself, which looks quite cool. Lovely. Again, not perfect, but you know, it's very straightforward just to show how we can make a few of them. And on the right hand side, we've got our different text layers as and how we like. This is a great opportunity to put the ruler in. So I can put the ruler alongside the T, like so, and ensure that everything is not going past the T. If anything, I might actually make the T slightly larger. Control T to change any size of text, images, anything like that whilst that layer is selected. Let's bring that down slightly, and that's centered. Lovely stuff. Let's go back to our move tool. It's V on the keyboard if you like, and that's now aligned with the T, which then means I can grab interview and James Bale. If I hold shift, I can select both at the same time. Press on the move tool, and I can just drag that into place like so. So it's aligned and looks great. Okay, once I'm happy with that, back to my move tool and move that ruler out of the way like so. Simple as that. Right. Last thing I want to show you is kind of a few different ways to kind of remove the background. I'm going to grab this road icon and drag it into my project, and there it is sitting there. If I align it as well with the eye so it's in the way, great. Should I just leave it like that? Does that do? Or what are a few of our problems here? Well, hypothetically, I don't know if I'm allowed to use that road logo, so we need to get rid of that. And secondly, I don't like the white background. It kind of gets in the way and makes my work look a bit tacky. So let's zoom in, and we've got a couple of options here. So we have our rubber tool over here. It needs to be rasterized, so I'm going to rasterize that. At the moment it's not editable. There we go, because we need to rasterize it. You can click on it and it will do it like so. And we could, you know, try and just rub it out. I guess that would kind of work. It'd take you a little while. You could do it that way. And again, all your properties are up here. You can drop the opacity, which is how like see-through it is, which kind of means that it's a bit softer when you go through it, but that's going to take you a long while. I was shown by the man on the screen himself this lovely tool, which I've never stopped using since he showed me it, okay? You've got a magic eraser tool and the background eraser tool. The background eraser tool is very straightforward. Make the brush as big as the image, and then I want you to click on the white part or the background color of the image. If I do that, like so, it will delete everything that is that color and try and understand that that is the background. And we can click just around, as you can see, there's a slight border. you're probably noticing it hasn't done everything. That's because we need to, with this crosshair in the middle, just click in those spaces, and everything within the brush that is within those borders of the kind of structure of the mic will be deleted, like so. Pretty good, right? Yeah, happy with that? That is how you delete a background if it's, you know, razor sharp like that. Obviously, we're dealing with hair at the top up here, so it wouldn't have worked as well with James's image. It might happen where you accidentally click on the image like so, and it might delete some of the red. Control-Z to undo, or, as I've not mentioned, edit undo. That's an option. So yeah, so we can get rid of stuff like that. Or if I just undo it to put it all back, Control-Z a few times to put it all back, I can go with the magic eraser tool, and it's more or less the same thing, but it doesn't really have a kind of a radius. I just click on it, and it's everything on that layer. It's going to try and delete that's white, or the color in which you could select. So red, for example, it's going to try and delete it completely in that area. Okay, so there's that. Both correct ways to do it. There is no right or wrong answer, but both a kind of cool way. Trial and error, and then we zoom out. That looks a lot cooler. Right, next thing we can do. Let's use the ContentAware Fill again, but let's use the Lasso Tool, because what I want to do is show you how effective the ContentAware Fill is. So the Lasso Tool is essentially a freehand tool where I can just select something like so. There's our marching ants, lovely stuff. Go to Edit, Fill, ContentAware, and it's going to use the area around it to kind of fill it in like so. And if I zoom out, the Rode mic is gone. It's quite incredible. I'll undo it, put it back, edit, fill, ContentAware, press OK, Control-D to deselect, and that's very impressive. And now we just have a generic mic, and we don't know whose brand it is. So if you aren't allowed brands on your advertisement, you can get rid of them like so. Like if you had an Adidas logo just here, you could do the exact same thing. Yeah, it does still work if I undo it again, if I just deselect like so, and I use the square tool. You can use that as well, that's fine. No problem at all there. We can just go to Fill and OK. There we go. It's actually done just as good of a job. It's just a way to select that area, okay? There is a few different ways you can, cut stuff out, fill stuff in. You've got that spot healing brush tool, which basically, fills in spots. If the good example that it likes to use, if I click off on it, is if it's a chef's kind of shirt that's got stains on it, and you can kind of fill in that space and get rid of it. So if I clicked on it and I filled in the road space, it should say bye-bye to it. It's not perfect because it's got a little kind of texture issue, but it's taking the area around it. A lot of people, if they've got blemishes on their face, or again a logo on their chest, the spot healing brush tool can do that for you. Okay, right. The last thing I kind of want to show you is how to kind of manipulate the colors and stuff and make things look nice and cool. So what we can do is we can add a bit more contrast and brightness. Say for example, you've taken a nice photo of James, but it's a bit underexposed, a bit overexposed. As long as James is selected, we can go to Image, Adjustments, and then all of our options, which I'm not going to go through all of them today because they are quite endless, you can change them. So I can go brightness and contrast, I can up the brightness slightly, give it a bit more shadow and definition, etc., and hit OK. That's done a bit of that. I can go on adjustments, go to vibrance or hue and saturation. Let's try that one, and I can make him a funny color if I want to. Again, use these tools sparingly. I'm just showing you how they work. We can take saturation is how much colors in the image. We can make him black and white if we want to. Got a variety of options. My best advice: grab a layer, go image, adjustments, go, oh, what's color lookup? Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to play with that one. Okay, what should we go with? Selective color. Okay, reds. What does that mean? Okay, I'm gonna. Oh, okay. So it manipulates the reds in the image. Okay, I can then play with the greens in the image. Okay, let's play with those. And basically, you can take out all the colors besides one color and leave it there with that one. But have a play with them. See what they do. Another thing you can do is you can change the color of eyes if you'd like to. You can, same way, you can use your Lasso tool, or you can use your Select tool. Say I grabbed James's eye here, like so. Obviously, I want to hold Alt and delete that area there. I just want his eye. Lovely, lovely, lovely. There we go. So it's not perfect. Yours will be a lot better. That is now the only area in which I'm going to manipulate. So let's go back to that hue and saturation and use it a bit better, okay? So I can change the color of his eye. Let's make it, a really rich blue, up the saturation to give it a bit of color. And then, oh, we don't want it to be too light. Let me hit OK. Now if I deselect, you're thinking, oh, that doesn't look great. But if I zoom out, he now has a blue eye. Perfect. Yours will be a lot better than mine. But it's, again, a good example. If we did the other one, oh, actually, we could do, let's try this. It's actually giving me a good idea here. We go around the frame of James's glasses, like so. Doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to see why. Again, if I spend more time, it's going to be more precise. I could go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and take the color out of that eye, and all of a sudden he's got this crazy kind of dual eye effect. Why you'd want to do that, I don't know. Just giving you an example of how you could do that. So let's summarize. Let's turn things off and slowly turn them back on as we kind of move forward. So we put the image in and we filled in the top using Fill Content Aware. We then added some text, like so. We changed the color of it with our different color options, and then we added some effects to kind of give it kind of a chocolate look. We then we then cut James out of his area, and then we put him in front of the text, or around the text if you want to go from there. The end kind of product is we manipulated James's higher layer to add some cool funky colors and effects. We then added some a small tagline and his signature, lovely. And then we added a Rode mic because James loves his sound, and we filled in the Rode logo and cut out the background, okay? Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Steve, it doesn't really look the best, and that is very true. With a lot more time and a lot more care, you could get a lot better product. However, I'm just showing you how these tools work, and this is probably the software where you have the most opportunity to do the craziest of things, okay? For those who've never used Photoshop before, the best advice I can give you is start with this basic stuff. And if you think, I'd love to do this, I'd love to change it to do this, I'd like to make my text look like chocolate, it is doable and there's a way to do it. There's probably 5 different ways to do it as well, which may be slightly overwhelming, but in my opinion it's a good thing because everybody gets that end product a slightly different way. Use the software in a way that you feel comfortable. As I said, there's a variety of different images. There's a variety of different tools I haven't even touched on here. The pen tool is a really good one. It's a different way to select things. We've got the burn and smudge and dodge tool. Loads of different stuff. The eyedropper if you want to select a color to change later. Your standard brush tool just to kind of draw if you wanted to. If I just up the opacity here, just to draw. So the opportunities on the software are literally endless, okay? The frame tool, for example, you can make a specific box for an image to kind of go into. Honestly, endless, okay? I'd recommend using those rulers as well to ensure that everything's straight and lined up. And at the top, you could, if it was a proper poster, you'd have your date and the price. Down here, be barcodes, etc. Loads of opportunity, and these lines are not going to come out with the end product, okay? Great segue, let's get it out of Photoshop and I'm going to prove to you that it's not on the end product. Once we're happy with it, we can go to File, we can go to Save, okay? What it's going to do is I'd recommend, saving as a Photoshop document so it's still the editable file. And I can just hit Save because it's actually where I want to save it. Lovely. And that is now a Photoshop document. I can load it up and the layers are still there. To show people my work, I want to save as, same place. So there's the Photoshop document I just saved. Save type as. You want to save it probably as a JPEG. That's a good image. If you want to keep the transparent background, which if I just show you here, if I just click off a second, if I undid everything on here and you see this is essentially a transparent background, so there's nothing there. If I wanted to get rid of that and bring the image out with keeping the rule that there is no background, I want to File, Save As, and I want it to be a PNG file. That honors the fact that there is nothing in the background, okay? If I saved it as a JPEG, it's just going to fill that empty space in as white, okay? So bear that in mind. If you do want something to be cut out permanently, ensure it's a PNG, but we don't need that for now. So File, Save As, and we can just do it as a JPEG file, this one here, okay? Obviously, there's the other images that I put in. Was going to use Will, was going to use a pit crew, was going to use Tom Nook, but, this is what we've ended up with. So hit Save, and we want to try and make it the biggest and highest quality file as possible. You may think to yourself a low quality file is going to be better because it's smaller. Try and keep it as high as possible if you can. Hit OK. Not much changes on here, but then if I go on my files, there is my lovely image there, annoyingly with my brush tool through it, but there is our exported image. And if we needed to, here's our Photoshop document to reopen and then go and manipulate if there's any problems or changes, like deleting that. Very annoying, there we go, brush option. Lovely. That is pretty much it. I mean, as I said, it's going to be nice and straightforward. I'm not going to kind of go into all the stuff that I've done again, but it is nice and straightforward to kind of give you the basics of Photoshop. I haven't covered everything, so for those watching who know Photoshop, you know, I could be here for hours, days, weeks with this software, because it is the most free in terms of options and potential and opportunity. So just getting stuff in and going from there, it is the beginning. You know, when in future videos I'll get into feathering and masking and gradient tools and more in-depth layering and, you know, the puppet and warping tools, etc. So just for now, this is the nice basic intro to Photoshop, how to use it, the layers, etc, etc. I'll stop now. And that's it. That's pretty much everything. Any problems, do drop it in the comments. If there's any additional tips that people have, you know, again, drop them in the comments. As I said, I've not been able to cover everything today because it's supposed to be short and sweet. But that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching. There will be more Photoshop videos coming out in the future. But that's all from me today. My name's Steve. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.